What if one of the 20th century's greatest explorers of the human mind left behind a warning so stark, so unsettling, that it was deliberately buried? Imagine stumbling on a cache of private letters, pages inked with Carl Jung's own hand, where he outlines a truth about male desire more radical than anything he ever published. And then picture how, in the hushed corridors of academia, those revelations were shut away, locked from public view. This isn't mere speculation. Inside those letters, Jung spoke of a primal force lurking beneath the veneer of civilization, a force that, if denied or misunderstood, threatens to tear the soul apart. He traced it not only into the depths of individual neurosis, but into the machinery of propaganda, the rise of cults, and the orchestrated frenzy of mass movements. Why would Jung's closest confidants choose to consign these insights to oblivion? Perhaps because acknowledging this raw energy meant confronting aspects of ourselves we'd rather ignore. In Jung's view, male desire is not simply a biological urge. It is a gateway to the unconscious, a catalyst for both creation and destruction. When unclaimed, it festers in shadow, feeding violence and fragmentation until society itself begins to fracture. And so we ask, what happens when a warning this profound goes unheard? What cost do we pay when we deny the most elemental part of our nature? If Jung truly left us this message, the question isn't whether we can afford to listen, it's whether we can afford not to. What happens when we deny the very thing that defines us? Carl Gustav Jung wasn't born a legend. He became one through relentless fascination with the unseen. From his earliest memories, he felt the pull of something deeper than daylight reality. As a boy wandering the Swiss countryside, Jung recorded vivid dream images in a battered notebook, swirling symbols, alchemical transformations, a shadowy figure urging him onward. Those journals were his first glimpse of the unconscious, a realm he would spend a lifetime mapping. By his mid-20s, Jung had earned acclaim as a brilliant psychiatrist at the Berghalsli Clinic in Zurich. His patients arrived riddled with anxieties they could not name, and Jung coaxed their hidden narratives into the light. He began to sketch the archetypes, the wise old man, the nurturing mother, and above all, the anima and animus, the complementary forces of femininity and masculinity that dwell within every psyche. When Sigmund Freud invited Jung to join his inner circle, it felt like destiny fulfilled. Freud saw Jung as the heir to psychoanalysis. Jung saw Freud as a pioneer illuminating the sexual roots of neurosis. Together, they explored dreams as doorways to primal forces. Yet cracks appeared when Freud insisted that libido was purely erotic energy. Jung argued that it was far more complex, a spiritual, animating principle that could fuel creativity or unleash chaos. Their correspondence grew tense. Freud labeled Jung's broader vision metaphysical, while Jung accused Freud of reductionism. The final rupture came when Jung published his monumental work on symbols of transformation, insisting that myths and alchemy held keys to understanding the psyche, keys Freud refused to turn. By 1913, their friendship shattered. Jung struck out on his own, founding analytical psychology. In the decades that followed, Jung's writings ventured into territory his peers found unsettling. He described a fire at the core of male libido, an energy capable of forging masterpieces or fueling tyranny. He warned that without conscious integration of anima and animus, this fire would rage in the shadow, manifesting as collective fervor, cultish devotion, and even political fanaticism. Yet despite his stature, many in the Jungian community recoiled. Letters reveal that colleagues urged caution, worried that linking libido to mass violence would taint Jung's reputation. They advised him to emphasize balance and individuation rather than delve into the darker potential of unclaimed male desire. And so a vital thread in Jung's tapestry was left frayed, his most radical insights quietly set aside. But the question remains, could anyone who studied the unconscious for so long truly ignore the source of its greatest eruptions? Jung believed that only by facing the alchemy of our inner opposites, masculine and feminine, could we transform desire into a force for growth instead of destruction. His later notes hint at a message too potent for his time, yet perhaps more urgent than ever today. Beneath every conscious thought lies a hidden reservoir of energy, an underworld Jung called the shadow. Within that shadow swirl the rejected fragments of our personality, impulses we deem unacceptable, desires we refuse to own, and archetypal forces craving recognition. Central among these is the anima, the living feminine core in every man, and its counterpart, the animus, the dormant masculine spirit in every woman. Jung taught that when a man denies his anima, she does not vanish. Instead, she festers in the shadow, seeping out through dreams, projections, and irrational attachments. Imagine a man who hates weakness so fiercely that he demonizes any display of vulnerability in others. His scorn is a mirror of his own unacknowledged longing. In graphic form, we might see a dark pool roiling beneath a tranquil surface, then erupting as jagged tendrils that seize the conscious mind. In one striking case study from Jung's Zurich practice, a respected industrialist began hearing a whispered voice urging him to abandon his family, chase a stranger into the night, and surrender to an intoxicating, nameless passion. He slid into psychosis until Jung guided him through active imagination, inviting him to dialogue with the voice, his anima, in disguise. When the man named her Lilith, integrated her qualities of empathy and intuition, the hallucinations ceased. His destructive obsession transformed into creative vision, a philanthropic foundation promoting men's emotional health. But for every breakthrough, there was a darker turn. In another letter dated May 12, 1932, Jung warned his confidant Tony Wolff that when a man refuses to embrace his anima, his desire becomes a blind, volcanic force, erupting in cruelty and collective frenzy. He pointed to Europe's rising political cults as proof. Charismatic leaders projecting their unintegrated animus onto millions, fanning the flames of mass hysteria. Through projection, followers believed their leader embodied all virtues, while the sinners became embodiments of evil. This dynamic, shadow projection, fuels everything from obsessive celebrity worship to the bloodlust of war. Animus-driven women can likewise lose themselves in shadow when they reject masculine qualities. They become merciless critics or ruthless power brokers, enforcing a tyranny of intellect divorced from feeling. In both sexes, unclaimed anima/animus content metastasizes into ideological zeal and groupthink. Yet there's another path. Jung insisted that by confronting the shadow, through dream work, active imagination, and honest self-reflection, we reclaim forbidden energies and reintegrate them into consciousness. In that alchemical process, the anima's depth becomes empathy instead of possessiveness. The animus's strength becomes assertiveness instead of aggression. Desire, once a blind compulsion, is redirected toward art, love, and healing. But this integration is excruciating. It demands crawling into the dark, naming the nameless, and owning impulses we've long disavowed. And if Jung's contemporaries recoiled at his warnings, perhaps it was because they sensed the enormity of that task. To face the shadow of desire is to stand naked before the abyss and choose to forge something luminous in its place. In 2019, a young Jung scholar named Dr. Maya Fisher quietly slipped into the dusty vaults of the Basel Psychohistorical Archive. Row upon row of leather-bound volumes lined the walls. Published works, personal correspondence, and tucked behind an unmarked box, a slender folder stamped "Simply Confidential." Inside lay manuscripts Jung never intended the world to see. As Fisher turned the brittle pages, her breath caught. Here was Jung's handwriting, elegant yet urgent, describing what he called the dark wellspring of male yearning. One passage read, "This volcanic longing is neither sin nor shame, but a primal key, an erotic dream that unlocks the collective unconscious. It's so painful to confront that even I recoiled. She traced the inked words with trembling fingers. Further on, metaphors spilled across the page. Desire as molten iron forging the soul, and a subterranean river that floods the psyche when damned by shame. Fisher realized these notes went far beyond Jung's published archetypes. They claimed that unintegrated male libido itself was the crucible of both genius and atrocity. Determined to share this revelation, Fisher drafted an article for the International Journal of Analytical Psychology. But when she submitted her translation, the response was swift and unyielding. Senior members of the Jungian Society warned her. Releasing these passages would undermine Jung's legacy and ignite controversy no academic institution could afford. They insisted she omit the sections on erotic dreams and volcanic longing. In private emails, now partially redacted, gatekeepers argued that Jung's reputation hinged on balance and individuation, not the dark extremes of desire. They framed their objections as protection, safeguarding both Jung's family heirs and the public psyche from unsettling truths. Yet Fisher sensed a different motive, a fear that acknowledging such raw power would force men to confront impulses long buried, with no safe roadmap home. Months of negotiations followed. Fisher offered to footnote controversial passages, to frame them within scholarly context, even to limit circulation to academic peers. Each concession met with fresh resistance. Finally, her article was published with the dangerous pages excised, relegated to a footnote that read, "Certain passages redacted at the request of heritage trustees." In that moment, Fisher understood the full weight of Jung's own warning. Some truths are too painful to hear and too powerful to remain hidden. What was meant to inspire a revolution of self-knowledge became a silent echo in the archive shadows. And so, the manuscript lay forgotten once more, its most explosive insights shuttered behind academic protocol. Yet the question lingers. Was this suppression an act of protection, or the quiet censorship of a message the world desperately needs to reclaim? By mid-century, Jung's warning about unintegrated male libido had echoed through world history, from the charred ruins of battlefields to the manic fervor of political rallies. Today, it resurfaces in new guises. Online echo chambers, extremist movements, and digital cults that weaponize volcanic longing. Consider the rise of charismatic cult leaders in the 20th century. Figures like Jim Jones or Charles Manson, who tapped into men's unacknowledged yearning for transcendence and brotherhood. In dimly lit auditoriums, they preached utopian visions while stoking resentment and rage. Their sermons fused spiritual promise with erotic charge, turning followers into zealous devotees willing to sacrifice everything. These were not random crimes of madness, but the shadow of male desire projected outward, the anima denied, erupting as collective obsession. Fast forward to the 21st century. On social media platforms, the manosphere thrives, forums where men exchange memes glorifying dominance, decry feminist conspiracies, and share red pill manifestos promising masculine awakening. Here, Jung's volcano simmers beneath every post. A psychologist explains in an interview, "We see men seeking identity through aggression when they've never integrated their own emotional depth. This rage fills the void, unconscious desire projected as contempt for everything perceived as weak." A sociologist adds, "Propaganda has always used virile imagery, banners of iron fists, calls to purity, and now it's hyper-personalized. Algorithms feed each man the exact symbols that stir his shadow, reinforcing tribal loyalties and justifying violence." We cut to a cinematic reconstruction, a mass rally at twilight. Thousands chant in unison beneath towering screens, each face lit by digital flames. The camera zeroes in on a young man, eyes glazed, shouting a slogan that merges spiritual salve with violent promise. Over this, an expert voiceover reminds us that when desire lodges in the shadow, it feeds on projection. The innocent become enemies, and the leader becomes an avatar of unclaimed anima, a vessel for collective longing. Then there are the literal incubators of extremism, secretive online cells where toxicity metastasizes. Scroll through a montage of social media feeds, gifs of gladiatorial combat, alpha male brain hacks, conspiracy flowcharts linking global events to feminine control. Here, Jung's notion of erotic dreams as keys to the collective unconscious plays out pixel by pixel. A former manosphere influencer confesses in a dimly lit interview booth, "I sold anger as empowerment. The more I taught men to despise vulnerability, the more clicks and followers I got. It wasn't hate for its own sake. It was the only way to articulate the emptiness I felt." We juxtapose his testimony with archival footage of 20th century propaganda reels, Hitler's oratory, Mussolini's poses, revealing the same animus-driven spectacle. The veneer has changed, but the mechanics remain. Male desire, unclaimed by conscience, becomes a tool of manipulation, whether in mass rallies or in targeted ads funneling men toward conspiracy theories. Yet in this digital shadowland, Jung's insights also offer a way out. By naming these projections and reclaiming their energy through creative expression or authentic community, men can defuse the allure of the cultish. But that path demands courage. To face the volcanic force within, to dialogue with the shadow rather than surrender to its roar. In the flicker of phone screens and the thunder of rallies, Jung's dark wellspring still pulses. And until we learn to channel its heat toward empathy instead of aggression, the world will remain at the mercy of desires too painful to hear. Beneath the roar of collective frenzy lies a quieter, more searing crucible. The moment a man turns that volcanic longing inward. Meet David, a war veteran whose laughter once echoed across barracks, but now dissolves in the dead of night. In soft focus footage, he paces his bedroom at 3 a.m., eyes bloodshot. "I kept shooting at shadows," he confesses. "Not the enemy. I was shooting at the parts of me I refused to face." David's insomnia began when he returned home. The adrenaline of combat gave way to a hollow ache, a testament to unclaimed desire for connection, for compassion, for the anima he'd buried beneath steel. Contrast this with Marcus, a corporate executive whose office glitters with trophies of success. He sits behind a glass desk, voice measured. "I drank to feel something." Board meetings became therapy sessions. "I envied my own tears." For Marcus, the corporate climb masked a chasm. He denied vulnerability, equating softness with failure. Each promotion deepened the wound, until addiction cracked his armor. And then there's Raphael, an avant-garde painter whose canvases swirl with dark curves. In his studio, canvases drip red and gold. "My art was bloodletting," he says, until someone asked me why I never painted joy. Raphael's breakthrough came when he read Jung's diary entries, penned during the Red Book period, pages stained with Jung's own tears and trembling script. In one haunting passage, Jung writes, "I stood before the mirror of my unconscious and recoiled. She, the anima, beckoned me with both promise and peril. I trembled, for in that trembling lay my salvation." That tremor is universal. It is the voice in the dead of night, the hand shaking as you finally name the image in your dream. It demands vulnerability so raw that few are taught to welcome it. Through their testimonies, a pattern emerges. Pain is the currency of transformation. Each man describes a descent, not into madness, but into authenticity. David learned to cradle his own fear. Marcus discovered that tears could lubricate ambition with empathy. Raphael found that joy lived on the other side of a shadow. Yet none arrived unscathed. The journey split their lives in two, before and after self-confrontation. It is not a path of triumph. It is a path of surrender. As we witness their agony, we glimpse Jung's radical truth. To integrate desire is to embrace the abyss and, in doing so, become more fully human, even if the price is your most cherished illusions. Confronting the volcanic furnace of desire is only the beginning. Jung offered methods, time-tested keys to unlocking and integrating those buried energies. The first is active imagination, a practice of entering the inner landscape as if walking into a dream. Close your eyes. Envision the blocked river of longing as a wall of molten rock. Now imagine reaching out and chiseling away at it, grain by grain. In active imagination, you give voice to that river. You write its words, sketch its symbols, have a conversation with its personification, your anima. Over weeks, that wall softens. The molten core spills into your awareness, no longer a threat, but a vital current. Next is dream work. Jung believed that our nightly visions are coded messages from the unconscious, carrying the very energy we suppress by day. Keep a dream journal at your bedside. When fragments return, an ocean, a dark forest, a beckoning figure, don't dismiss them. Sit with the images. What emotion do they stir? What color? What shape? Slowly, patterns emerge, your personal mythology of desire. Finally comes shadow dialogue. In a quiet room, you speak aloud to the part of you that feels shame, shame about longing, shame about surrender. You might say, "I see you, shadow. I know you've carried this pain." And then you listen for the reply. That reply may come as a sudden memory, a bodily sensation, or a whispered phrase. You record it, honor it, and welcome it into your conscious life. To see these tools in action, consider the story of Elena, CEO of a mid-sized tech firm. Under her leadership, rapid growth and aggressive acquisitions masked a deep fear of weakness. After a breakdown on stage, overwhelmed by stress and unable to speak, she sought Jungian therapy. In active imagination, she met her anima as a towering librarian, urging her to slow down and listen. Through dream work, she traced recurring symbols, sprawling gardens that withered whenever she left her desk. In shadow dialogue, she confronted the part of herself that equated compassion with failure. The transformation was neither fast nor painless. Elena took months off to meditate. She canceled deals to mentor her team. She stepped down from the CEO role to become board chair, creating space for collaboration. Her company didn't collapse, it thrived. Innovation skyrocketed, employee retention improved, and profits grew sustainably. Her ambition, once a wildfire, was now channeled into visionary leadership rather than exhaustion and ego. During a guided visual meditation sequence, experienced here as ambient visuals of molten metal pouring into molds, we witness how integrated desire can become molten gold. Creativity flows as compassion for self and others ignites. Authentic masculinity or femininity emerges not from dominance, but from balanced inner dialogue. This path demands commitment. You will face doubts. Am I losing my edge? You will feel the pull of old habits. Go back to being tough. But each time you choose to dialogue with your shadow, record your dreams, or interactive imagination, you forge a bridge between unconscious power and conscious purpose. Jung's fire need not consume. When integrated, it becomes the forge of character, a fire that tempers empathy with strength, vision with humility, and desire with wisdom. The result is not perfection, but wholeness, and a life lit from within. Jung taught that true transformation isn't an isolated feat. It ripples outward, reshaping the world around us. Yet our institutions still wage a silent war on male emotionality. Schools praise stoicism and dismiss tears as weakness. Newsrooms valorize hard reporting, equating vulnerability with softness. Even blockbuster films recycle the same trope. The rugged hero who buries his feelings beneath steel and testosterone. In classrooms, boys learn early that empathy is for girls. A generation of teachers warns them, big boys don't cry. Textbooks bolster that myth, spotlighting male conquerors and martyred leaders, while sidelining men who lead with compassion. At universities, psychology departments teach cognitive theory, often neglecting the somatic, visceral truths Jung insisted were central to healing. The result is a cultural deficiency, a collective shadow where unexpressed desire festers in secret forums and toxic subcultures. But across the globe, new alchemists are stirring the pot. Men's circles, somatic therapies, and gender-fluid art movements that echo Jung's call for balance. In Sweden, a network of men's circles meets weekly in forest glades. No agenda, no sermon, just raw conversation. Participants share childhood wounds and the shame they carry around desire. Through guided rituals and grounding exercises, they reclaim tenderness as strength. Researchers tracking these groups report dramatic drops in depression and anger outbursts. In London, somatic therapists invite men into movement-based workshops. Here, participants learn to sense where tension lodges in the throat, the chest, the jaw, and to breathe it out like smoke. As bodies soften, so do defenses. One therapist explains, when men feel safe in their bodies, they stop projecting shadows onto others. Meanwhile, in Berlin's galleries, gender-fluid artists are dismantling archetypes. Paintings blur masculine and feminine forms into flowing mosaics. Performance pieces invite audience members to embody archetypal energies without labels. The message is clear. Our inner divisions need not dictate external roles. These cultural experiments demonstrate that integrating the collective anima and animus can defuse society's most entrenched conflicts. Political polarization, after all, is fueled by projection, demonizing the other to conceal our own disowned traits. When we learn to dialogue with those traits, both personally and communally, the need for scapegoats dwindles. Consider Northern Ireland's peace-building initiatives, where former combatants sit in mixed-gender circles to share dreams and confront their fears. By naming the anima's gifts, empathy, intuition, and the animus's gifts, clarity, purpose, participants forge unexpected alliances. The process doesn't erase history, but it transforms enmity into mutual responsibility. Jung's vision was never merely psychological. It was profoundly social. He believed that a healed individual psyche contributes to a healed society. Today's modern alchemy invites us to remake our collective structures, schools, workplaces, media, so they honor emotional authenticity alongside strength. In doing so, we awaken a new form of power, one that wields desire not as a weapon, but as the lifeblood of creativity, compassion, and communal resilience. The true legacy of Jung's message lies not in dusty archives, but in the alchemical fires we kindle together. We return now to that dimly lit archive room, dust motes dancing in the train of a single shaft of light. The leather-bound volumes that guard Jung's secrets stand silent. But tonight, their silence trembles with possibility. Will you dare to look into the dark wellspring? The narrator intones, voice low and resonant. Will you open the pages Jung never meant you to see? This is your invitation to become an alchemist of your own psyche. Begin with journaling prompts designed to unearth the buried currents of desire. What image visits you most in dreams? And what emotion does it carry? What have you felt an inexplicable pull toward another person, place, or idea? And what did you refuse to acknowledge in that moment? What qualities in others spark both longing and resentment within you? Set aside 15 minutes each evening. Write without judgment. Let the anima or animus speak through your pen. For deeper exploration, turn to Jung's own map of transformation in Symbols of Transformation. In those pages, you'll find the myths, rituals, and alchemical metaphors that guided Jung and can guide you through the labyrinth of the unconscious. Seek community in the burgeoning online networks where men gather to share dreams, lead shadow dialogues, and practice active imagination. Visit platforms like Men's Dreamwork Collective, the Anima Project, or the Global Jung Circle. Here, your revelations find resonance, and your fears find solidarity. Remember, this path is not a descent into shame. It's a journey toward liberation. By naming your desires, you reclaim the spark that animates creativity, connection, and courage. You stand less as a fragment and more as a whole being. As the camera pans the archive's silent shelves, the narrator's voice softens. Jung left you this message as both a warning and a gift. The darkness within is not your enemy. It is your power, unclaimed. Will you wield it? The final shot lingers on a single red thread, Jung's hand-drawn annotation, tracing a path from shadow to light. Then the screen fades to black, and your journey begins. Rippling water carries a secret rhythm, each wave a pulse of longing echoing through time. In that current lies the memory of Jung's own words, scrawled in the margins of a forgotten manuscript. Desire is sacred fire, a primordial forge wherein the soul is shaped. To deny it is to extinguish the spark of our becoming. Feel the metal of your own spirit, as though molten iron poured into form. That fire, untamed, once threatened to consume Jung himself. Yet he returned again and again to its glow, convinced that within its heat lay the alchemical secret of transformation. Imagine a lone figure standing at dawn's edge, shoulders loosened by the first rays of light. In that moment of hush before the world awakens, the flame within flickers, timid, yet alive. Jung believed this ember speaks to each of us, a call to witness our deepest desire and attend its glow with both reverence and courage. Across the centuries, that ember has illuminated poets, prophets, and revolutionaries. It whispered to Dostoevsky in the throes of fevered insight, to Frida Kahlo as she painted her wounds, and to every anonymous soul daring to speak the unspeakable. It is the echo of Jung's message, traveling through the dark corridors of history, awaiting ears brave enough to listen. Now, that echo finds you. It resonates in the tremor of your heart when you name a hidden longing, in the quiet between each breath when you stand before your own shadow. Jung wrote of desire as both sword and plow, capable of cutting through illusion and of breaking ground for new growth. To heed this call demands more than acknowledgement. It demands devotion. It asks you to stoke the ember with honesty, to feed it with ritual, be it the ritual of dreaming, of writing, or of sitting in stillness as the world stirs around you. In doing so, you do more than integrate your anima and animus. You become a living conduit of the collective unconscious, forging pathways of empathy, insight, and genuine power. This is the final invitation. Let the echo of Jung's message transform your dawn. Carry its ember into the day, into every encounter, every choice, every act of creation. There, in the ordinary world, the sacred flame takes fire. And if you listen with courage, you will hear a single promise, whispered across time. Jung left you a message, heard only by those brave enough to answer. The echo fades, but the ember remains. It is yours to kindle,